Welcome to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. This is the place to be for all things mastering your mindset, diving into your spirituality, having a ton of fun, getting confident, and today getting sexy because I have my dear friend Eva Clay on today as my guest. And Eva is a clinical sexologist. Yes, you heard that right. Clinical sexologist. What a cool name for a job is that? She's also a psychotherapist and she's a thought leader. She is a leader in really helping women understand their leadership and owning their power in their sensuality and sexuality as they are leading in whatever it is, whether it's at home, whether it's in business, wherever it is in their lives. So this is not only an interview for women, it's also for men because P.S., you men, you also have women in your lives, right? You have daughters, wives, girlfriends, aunts, friends. You have all kinds of women in your life. And the more that you understand our journey into leadership and our empowerment, it's going to help you support us and these people that you love and really being awesome leaders in the world. So here's my friend Eva Clay, all the way from Hawaii. Hi, Eva.
Hello, aloha. Happy to be here with you.
Aloha. I should have flown to Hawaii to do this interview.
Totally. I wish you were here right now. Oh my God, we would be rocking this nude black sand beach that's right in front of my house.
Oh, wow. A nude black sand beach. Sign me up, baby. I'm on the next flight. Okay, cool. So I love what you do in the world and how you walk through the world. And I feel like your mission is just so powerful for women to be in themselves in a different way, to learn a new way to be in themselves, I guess is a way that I would describe it. So since you are the leader in this area, I want to hear from you. Where are we now in today's world in terms of women's leadership and sexuality being expressed in a powerful way?
Yeah, great question. So I see us as being in a really bipolar state. On one hand, we definitely see more women rising into positions of leadership and authority, particularly in our political system and in our educational systems. I think, in fact, women surpass men right now in graduate school enrollment and even high school completion. So we are seeing women becoming educated in our country, in the U.S., and most of the Western world more and more. So I believe that we're going to continue to rise because of those education numbers. However, we have a long way to go. At the rate that we're going now, I read this statistic recently, it's going to take more like 150 years at the current rate we're at for women to be at in equal levels of leadership to men. So we got to put the gas pedal on this, ladies and gentlemen. We need to accelerate this. And at the same time, we're seeing in our media more and more hypersexualized expressions from women. We're looking at Cardi B. We're looking at WAP. We're looking at Instagram, what's going on Instagram. And we're seeing more and more young women hypersexualized at a very, very young age. So the question is that a good thing? Yes, women are more sexually expressed, but I feel like, and this is something we can jam on here, but I feel like the way that we're going in our sexual expression could really bring about a lot of damage. We might be going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I really hear that. And it's very disturbing on Instagram and other places of how these young girls now, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, they think they think that they have to show up on Instagram in their bikinis and the sexy poses. And I'm like, whoa. So I hear what you're saying. Like it's coming in earlier, and that's not and that's not expressed sexuality. That's just expressed sex, basically. Like it's not innate, powerful sexuality from the female form. That's like, I want to look hot so I get guys to like me or more likes on my pic. And I see it as very destructive to the evolution of women in today's world.
I have to agree with you. And so that's the bipolarity I'm talking about. So we look around and we say like, wow, women are so sexually liberated today compared to even 50 years ago. But is that sexual liberation, or is that still a cage? Are women still being seen as sexual objects? Are young women sexualizing and overexposing their bodies really at the effect of rampant free internet pornography, I think is a huge influencer here. Or is that empowerment? And there's a fine line there. There's a threshold. And I think it's important as a society that we begin to feel into that and to develop some limits.
Ooh, yeah, I love that. So you being you, having such a bigger vision, I love to, hear your thoughts on what else that can look like. But first, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what do you see are the possibilities for women in leadership in the future?
Oh, I mean, simple world domination.
Oh, right. Just that.
Yeah. Well, I'm someone, there's a lot of talk today about the difference between female leadership and feminine leadership. And feminine leadership is non-genderized. So it means to insert the feminine principles into the way that we govern. I'm a big proponent of both. I actually want women at the steering wheel. And I want them showing up with their feminine energies intact. Like I want to restore the balance of masculine, feminine energies in the world. And when I say energies, I mean influences, our philosophies, our behaviors, our value systems. We are hands down seeing the long-term effects of patriarchy on our planet as we speak. We're looking at the climate crisis. We're looking at social unrest. We're looking at a raging pandemic. We're looking at all of these leaders and governments that are masculine-driven, male-led, and patriarchal, failing profoundly. And that is, I believe, because we are missing the feminine balance, the feminine component of empathy and of collaboration, cooperation, longer term vision that's based more on the collective good than on the egoic satisfaction, the short term, the short term payoff and the image driven ego, which is intrinsic to patriarchy. Mm-hmm. So this is the opportunity for me.
Yeah. And you said it so well of like bringing that feminine energy into the world leadership brings in the empathy, brings in the collaboration, brings in the cooperation, which is more feminine based. And so I hear what you're saying, and that can be lacking so many times in the leadership that we have. And then when women are in leadership in high level roles, then they're under more scrutiny. They're having to be a man in the patriarchal. It's like a woman. I always call it like a man in a skirt. It's like the women have to conform to the ways of the masculine. And you can see that in politicians. They definitely have that edge of a masculine edge because that's how they have to be in order to show up and play in that boys' world. But it's like the opportunity is to not have that. It's the opportunity is to, what if there is this other type of leadership that works with men as well? It's not like saying like men are bad and they shouldn't be in power. That's not what anyone is ever saying. It's like, how do we bring in a different point of view and it be heard and it be seen and it be valued as well?
Absolutely. And that's where I feel like the tectonic plates are beginning to shift in our foundation, in the way that we see the value of women. And a moment ago you asked, and like we were talking about women being hypersexualized, what do we do? My answer for pretty much everything, Arian, is going to be education. Mm-hmm. And now that more and more women are entering our educational systems and gaining entree to professions that typically were male dominated, I think I recently heard an interview with Melinda Gates, who's like one of my sheroes. I just love this woman, and she's controversial in some circles, but I don't give a flying fuck, quite honestly, because I think she's amazing. She talks about perhaps the number one thing that we can do to get women in positions of leadership and power is to sponsor them into what typically were male-dominated industries, tech, sports, and engineering. Mm-hmm. And the more that they can get into those schools, so when schools provide an incentive for women to enroll in these disciplines and make it safe for them to be there in these big industries, then the more they're going to rise. Women are natural leaders. We are the natural leaders of the tribe. And this is why. There's this misconception that, the masculine is hard and tough and the feminine is soft. That's not what I'm talking about. Feminine leadership is keeping the whole community in mind. The woman, the feminine, she sees the whole picture. In any family, who is the glue? It's the mother. It's the love of the mother. Women have more white matter in their brain. Women have more oxytocin. So oxytocin is the hormone that is responsible for many things, the feeling of love, but it's also responsible for being able to see a big picture, to see the connection between different parts of a system. So isn't that interesting? So the more oxytocin that we have, the more vision we're able to hold. And so the feminine in leadership looks at the entire society as a whole, not just her dominion, not just her country even, but the whole globe. How does this impact? How does this policy impact everyone's economy? How does it impact everybody's ocean, everybody's air, everybody's food cultivation? And this is the kind of leadership that we need today, like now. So, yeah.
I love this because I love how you're explaining this, because it makes so much sense when you just, like, the metaphor you gave is like the mom is, who keeps the whole family community together. And it's like, oh, that's the microcosm of women around the globe. So it's like, right, I get it. Like, women have that innate leadership. And I think so many of us have just thought that's so normal. You know what I mean? Like, we just are we are the community people. We are creating connections, but it's so normal. Well, I can speak for myself. It's so normal that I didn't even know it was like a role of leadership, and it could be a greater role of leadership.
In my book, that is leadership. I think we're so steeped in the patriarchy that the problem is not that we've forgotten what the feminine is. The problem is that we are also drunk on the patriarchy. It's so pervasive through every cell of our being and our perception that we don't even know we're in it. It's like the ocean that we swim in. It's the air that we breathe. And in the patriarchal culture, it's competitive. It's competitive. It's for the good of your own family, your own society, your own country, competing over others for resources instead of sharing and collaborating and leveraging resources. Instead of there being an exchange of resources for the good and upliftment of all, there's a coveting, and then there's an aggressive retaliation against others who threaten to encroach on your resources. So we think that's leadership, is making your country number one. That to me is not leadership. That's the patriarchy in effect. So getting women into power and getting the feminine back into balance with those masculine values. I feel this is the calling of our time. Like, I personally was born into this time to do this.
Yeah. And there's so many, there's so many other women around the world who are feeling this and experiencing this too, to bring this back into balance. And I love what you said about Melinda Gates, of how it's really about education and, creating the opportunities for women in these male dominated areas. And it's not to take jobs away or take things away. It's never that. It's in this world of collaboration. It's like, well, how do we, I went to a marketing workshop a couple weeks ago, and it was like 75 people, and it was all men. And I went, and I was just there with a friend. Like, I wasn't at the workshop, and we were asking the guys, and we're like, are there any women here? And they go, no. Like, in this particular industry, which I would say is a little techie, not a little techie, a lot techie. And they go, one woman's been here sometimes. And I'm just like, whoa, because it's not that women can't do this job. Like, if I sat down there and figured it, like, I could do it too if I put in the time and effort. But it's just, it's that exclusive world. So it's like, well, how do we create the opportunity for women. And as I'm saying this, I'm also thinking it has to also, creating the opportunity for women has to come from men, because like we can't force it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I mean, so what do you say about that?
Yeah, I agree. And it starts from the ground up. So even in our educational systems, in the STEM programs, in the math, sciences, engineering, we need for our teachers to be welcoming more girls into these programs. We need there to be a foundational shift in terms of not only who's welcomed or who's allowed, but like how are women fundamentally seen? Back to, let's rewind a little bit, the young girls on Instagram. And how does a society value its women and girls? What is the value of a woman and a girl? When we continue to value women primarily as sexual objects, and then suddenly there's a woman in that marketing meeting, what is she seen as? How is she treated? How is she related to? How many sexual advances do you feel like that woman is going to get that day? Or sexual harassment? How many microaggressions will she encounter in that day? The single woman sitting in an all-male marketing program. And so this is why I teach sex and leadership together, because I in my bones, I know that if we want women in positions of leadership and power, we need to shift the culture around sex. We are living in a highly overblown sexualized culture in the West. And at the same time, a hugely sexually shameful culture. And of course, the sexual shame leads to the sexual hyperexpression of it, because there's not a balance and a holistic way of relating to it. So when a young boy starts looking at free internet porn, violent internet porn at the age of 9, okay, that's the average age that today a boy encounters pornography.
Wow, that's 9. Shocking and appalling and sad in my book.
9.
Wow.
So how do you think that boy grows up seeing women? So we need to intervene at these basic levels. By the way, girls seeing internet porn very early on too, maybe for different reasons. They want to look at, what does a grown woman's body look like? What does sex look like? I mean, just do a Google. I mean, like, I'm kind of like old school, I'm kind of old school here. Like, I wasn't really tapped into this world until like a decade ago, where you could, Google anything, it's going to come up. If your kid has a smartphone and access to the internet, even for a few minutes, what's the first thing they're going to look up?
Yeah.
Sex.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Naked women, naked men. Yes.
Totally. I remember looking at Playboys when I was 12, or like Playboy magazines I would find in my brother's room or something. And, wow, I look at all the women like, so, young girls are growing up thinking that this is what they should look like, and that this is what sex is. And it's not just about sex. See, like, so what I'm teaching is not just sex. It's looking at how our sexual culture, our relationship to sexuality appears everywhere, and how we genderize, how we embody, how we lead. So how do you think young girls are thinking about their role and their value when they see so much attention and emphasis going into these pornographic images on not only Instagram, but porn and TikTok and like all forms of social media? Adolescent teenage girls are looking for social currency. This is part of their brain development, and what they're supposed to do at that age is to look for, what is my value to the tribe? Where do I fit in? Who am I? What is my role and function here? And so what they're getting imprinted with is that my role and function here, my value, is my sexual body. So do you think those young girls are going to end up, the single woman in the lab, in the science lab? Or, so we need to look at our sexual culture. And again, the solution in my book is education. And I also want to make this conversation relatable to your listeners in terms of what they can do to start empowering their leadership and making an impact in the world. So happy to answer any questions on that front too.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking is, because it has to, I agree, like education is imperative. And it's like, well, what can people be doing at home? Again, where do you start it in your own life, or where do you expand it in your own life? Whether you are with a partner who's a woman, or with you have a daughter, or you have a friend, like how do you support how do women support this? How do men support it? Like what can we do within ourselves in our home life and or work life to be more empowered in this area?
Great. Let's talk about that. I would say if you're listening to this, start to examine your beliefs about sexuality, not just about sex, but I mean sexuality as a whole. What do you think sex is for? What do you use sex for in your own life? Is sex an outlet for you? Is it a way to connect with another partner? Is it a way to escape with a partner? Is it sport? Is it to get pregnant? What are you using sex for? And to begin to flesh that out and to look at where you've been influenced by our current dysfunctional culture around sex, in terms of is there a lot of shame that you carry about it? Is there, are there things you've never spoken to regarding your sex? Do you make requests? Do you endure sex? It's shocking the number of women I work with that have spent their entire lives enduring sex because it's painful, it's uncomfortable, they check out, they numb out, they hate their husband, but they just lay there and take it. Is that what's going on for you? And if so, how has that then diminished your power in the rest of your life? And let me build a little bridge here as to how those two might be connected. Your sexual body, even your anatomical physical body, the lower triangle of your body, the pelvis, is your engine. It's the seat of your power. It's your powerhouse. And this is mechanically, physiologically, esoterically, energetically, in every tradition, it's all in the pelvis. And when that part of your body is disowned or disavowed, when it's been violated or traumatized, when you feel that your own body, your own genitals are actually disgusting, as in the case with a lot of women find their body disgusting, then you are limiting your own power profoundly. And you've been taught to do this. Women are taught to hate their bodies, and we're taught to hate our genitals. And if you look at pornography, the genitals are mutilated. They're shaved. They're surgically altered. They're pounded, violently abused. And, vulvoplasty is that fastest rising plastic surgery procedure in the world.
Wow.
Vulvoplasty. So having the outer labiaplasty. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It's labiaplasty. So surgically reshaping the outer labia. No shame if anyone here has had that done. I think every woman has a right to the sovereignty of her own body. So there's no shaming that. But we need to look at what are the rising numbers and what's influencing that. And so back to the power train in the lower triangle of your body. When I work with women to get them empowered and into leadership, that's where we begin. It might sound weird because you think of like a woman coming to become a more powerful leader. She's in a suit, she's in the corporate world, she's in government, and yet we're actually talking about her pussy. Well, that's exactly what we do. It's like I reconnect her. I help her to repattern her relationship to her body and specifically to her sex. And when that becomes whole and healed and empowered and clear, oh my God, she's unstoppable.
Hmm. Wow. This is amazing and so interesting of how it's all connected. I want to speak more into that. We're going to take a break and come back in just a minute. And I want to follow up with this connection into our bodies because I think it's really powerful. So you're listening to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. I'm here with Eva Clay, and we'll be right back.
Fun for Life Radio, because creativity is intelligence having fun.
And we're back, and I want to tell you about a couple shows on our Fun for Life radio station that I listen to and love. So you will probably love Relationship Renegades with my friends Rachel and Emilio. They're engaged. They're an awesome couple, and they've gone through their ups and downs and their own experiences of in dating and other relationships. And so they lay it all out for you in Relationship Renegades with guests and their own experiences, and they're super fun. So definitely listen to that. And we are here today on Fun for Life Radio on the Dash Radio Network with my friend Eva Clay, who is a clinical sexologist, psychotherapist, and thought leader. And she was just taking us through how when a woman gets connected to her body, into her lower triangle of her pelvis, basically her sex, let's just call it her sex. When she gets really connected to that, she's unstoppable because, as Eva was saying, there's so much shame around sex and sexuality. I mean, come on. I don't know anyone who doesn't have shame around it. So then it just gets locked up, and women, like you say, we're taught to not like our bodies and always think we're fat and whatever. So fascinating. And I would just love to hear an example from yourself or someone that you've worked with of how this has shifted. Like what does it look like, and what's different in a woman's world when she really gets in touch with her sex and releases the shame?
Wow. Well, I wish you could see what I see every single day. It takes a lot of energy to suppress shame. It takes a lot of it. Yeah. So it occupies a lot of our conscious, but mostly subconscious attention and energy. And when that's released and she comes into wholeness. So let me just insert something here, because we talked before about women's sexual expression today and the Cardi B thing, which I love Cardi B, by the way, but I'm just using her as a great example here. Shame gets expressed in two ways. It goes into hiding, or it goes into hyper expression. So a woman walking around flaunting her body naked, being hypersexualized, is also an expression of shame. Because there's not a sense of protection around her sexual body. There's it's just a different flavor of shame.
Right. It's just the flip side. That makes so much sense.
Right. So what I'm talking about when I say when a woman comes into wholeness with her sexuality, it means that she literally understands that her body is sacred. And I don't mean to sound overly woo about it. I'm not an overly woo person, but something that is sacred, how do you treat it? How do you relate to it? Think about something that's sacred in our world history, the remains of Buddha, the Holy Shroud of Turin, some artifact or object that has been sacred for millennia. You treat it very carefully. There's deference to it. There's honoring to it. There's great protection around it. There's a sense of bowing to it, that it holds some mystery, some key, that it's some toggle, it's a connection to God or to the cosmos or to the divine. And so this is what a woman's body is, especially her sex. And when there's respect and honoring and a healthy expression of it, meaning when it feels right for her, when it feels safe for her, she expresses it fully and wholly and wildly, without reproach, without condemnation, without punishment. And she can also retract it at her will. So she's in mastery over her expression of it when, where, and if it feels safe to do so. That's sexual wholeness. And when that sexual wholeness is intact and we clear and heal the trauma that was there and we rewire and reset the cultural stigmas and the philosophies around sex, then she becomes sovereign in her body. And she begins to trust her intuition. She begins to develop boundaries. She can start to say no. She can also start to say yes. And her circuitry flows. The connection between the brain and the vagina clicks. And there's a communication that a conversation that begins to happen over her whole body. In the science of this, we call this interoception. Interoception. So she becomes fully embodied and all of her faculties come online. I want you to think about this, that when there's a trauma or withholds or shame that gets stuck in the pelvis. And basically, you can imagine that almost all trauma gets stuck in the pelvis. Mm-hmm. In Tantra, we talk about how anything that is unmastered or unfinished in the upper chakras, let's say you had an injury to your ego or to your identity, to yourself, you had a heartbreak, you had it in something inflicted your confidence, it all trickles down and it rests in the pelvic bowl.
Wow.
And so that's why, so your sex, your libido, your orgasm, your whole sexual functioning is really not just about sex. In fact, it's hardly ever about sex. It's about all the other unfinished business in the rest of your psyche and consciousness. And your sex becomes the kind of indicator light that tells you that something is yet unhealed in the rest of your being. So when we go into the pelvis, we heal that. We release it, we let it go, and then suddenly all this energy gets freed up. So imagine a woman walking into a position of leadership or power in a boardroom, in a classroom, in the legislature, in her family, and she has all of her faculties intact. Her intuition, her intellect, her sense of rationality and logic and reason, also her sense of creativity and artistic talent and her innovation. When all of these faculties are on board, she's unstoppable. She is everything. She is pure Shakti. She's pure power. This is who I want driving our world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing. She sounds awesome. I love her. Her who is us, who is this possibility. But I really hear what you're saying. And if you're listening, I really hope you can take this in of like, our bodies hold so much trauma and so many thoughts. And what Eva's sharing is like trauma gets stuck in that pelvic bowl, basically in the sex. And then it just festers and that more shame can come up and all of it. So it's really important to get that flow going, to release that shame, to release the traumas, which can be done through various methods. I mean, Eva's a psychotherapist. And so this is what she does, is she helps people. One of the things she does is helps people really release this and become whole within themselves. And then I get it. Like then the energy's flowing. It's like, oh, it's flowing from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. And you have more energy and you're not thinking about your shame. And then you're empowered and inspired to create different things. And you use your intuition differently. And it really makes sense of how it can all just open up so beautifully.
Yes. Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and more yeses. All the yeses. So I love you, really sharing with us this possibility and this kind of journey of what happens. And, how can people start? Like if a woman's listening to this radio show, what can she do to take the first step to become more empowered within her sexuality and her leadership from what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gosh, that was the question a while ago. I went on a tangent there. So begin by looking at your relationship to sex. What's there? Take an inventory. Write a letter to your vagina. And then write a letter back to yourself from your vagina. What does she have to say to you? Again, the pelvis and the genitals are the receptacle of your unconscious material. It was Plato who said, in order to understand psyche, you need to understand eros. That our sex and our psyche are so connected. And sex is typically the place where your unconscious material comes through. So begin a relationship with your genitals. Talk to your vagina. Look at it in the mirror. So instead of just sort of busting out the vibrator when you want to have an orgasm, sounds crazy, but it's so powerful. Get a mirror and talk to your pussy first. Look at her. Understand your anatomy. Develop a relationship there.
Wow, that's so important because it's, relationships are key to everything in life. Like we have relationships with our friends and our family and our partner, and they're all over the place. And yet this relationship to our sex organs is like not existent basically. And even with men and women, it's like, who's like friends with their genitals? I don't know very many people that are, unless they've done work like you. And so I love it. So it's like looking at if your vagina, your penis, whatever is your friend, how do you treat it? Like when you said it's sacred, if it's sacred, how do you treat it? How do you speak to it? How does this relationship show up differently when you actually start understanding that it is sacred and it is a relationship? And that can just be such a powerful game changer.
Absolutely. And I think particularly for women, and part of why it's so powerful for women is because our genitals are inside. It's not like we see it every day, all the time. We don't have this like appendage hanging off of our body. So, and also women are really convinced into disliking their vagina, their genitals, the smell, the look, the feel of it. It's gross. That the only time that they touch themselves is when they go to the bathroom or they're menstruating. I work with a lot of women who have never self-pleasured or never had an orgasm, or they only orgasm with a vibrator because they don't like touching themselves. So there's a lot of that stuff we need to dispel. And I love, like in the last 5 years, there's been this big movement around sex education and loving your pussy. And even the word pussy has really come into the collective consciousness, which is awesome. I think it's so great. So I really encourage everyone to engage with that. Use it more. It's like we're just taking a sledgehammer to the shame is what we're doing. And we're bashing it.
Yes. Love
and
that.
I think we're at a turning point where we're kind of coming back into balance then. Meaning to bring in more of the reverence and the honoring of the body. So things that you can do at home. Look at your body in the mirror. Touch your body. Name your pussy. Get to know her. A lot of my clients don't like the word pussy. They like to use different words to name their genitals, like lotus or shakti or flower or daisy or like whatever that is for you. Beautiful. And talk to her. One assignment I give my clients that they love and they really grow from is like every day, ask your pussy what she wants. What does pussy want right now? In my programs, we always check with, like, we want to have this bumper sticker that says WWPD.
I love that.
What would pussy do?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I love these like very clear things that women can start doing. Look at your body in the mirror. And I know that's hard for some women to like start. It's not you're going to look at your body and look at your pussy and be like, I love it. It's so great. You're not going to be like that your first date. You're probably going to have judgments, and that's okay because that's the starting point.
That's the starting point. And understand that the images of women's bodies that we've been given in porn and whatnot is not a realistic image. Most women have, maybe there are scars from childbirth. Every vulva looks different. I love that we're actually talking about vulvas right now on your show. Every vulva is different. And there, again, has been a great movement around sort of blasting that shame out, where you can just Google this. I think one of it was called the Vulva Project, where like hundreds of different vulvas were photographed. I always show these slides in my program so that women actually get to look at other real women's genitals, just to normalize how different everybody's body really is and how beautiful everybody's body really is. So, if you're a woman, you're wanting to rise in power and you want to rise in your sexuality and your sexual expression and your pleasure, this is a great place to start. Again, imagine a woman walking into a boardroom to give a presentation to a group of men, and she's got her pussy alive. Mm-hmm. She's she walks in on pussy, and I don't mean sexualized.
Right. And let's be very clear. It's not, she's walking in sexy to get the guys to like her in the meeting. Yeah.
See, that's the patriarchal distortion. Mm-hmm. That the sexually empowered woman is sexually empowered for men. That's not the kind of sexual empowerment I'm talking about here. Mm-hmm. It means that she's sexually whole. And that brings her empowerment because she knows her boundaries. She knows her value outside of sex. And she's not afraid or ashamed to express it when and where and if she wants. Mm-hmm. So her sexuality is not for the male gaze. But she walks into that boardroom with her pussy intact. She's fucking on fire. She's powerful. I look around at some of the more sexually empowered women that I know. I might include myself in that description, maybe.
Yes, definitely.
And meaning that there is a balance of boundary and expression. And I find that the more sexually whole a woman is, the more powerful she is. Mm-hmm. The more confidence she has, the more talkativity she has, the more assertiveness she has, the more creative she is. Like, she just really stops giving a fuck. Mm-hmm. Meaning stops giving a fuck about what other people think. And she creates from her heart, and she fulfills her divine assignment on the earth. When that aspect of our being is cut off, our sexuality, when it's cut off, when it's distorted, when it's violated, it trims a very big, vital part of who we are and our power and energy system. So I'm here to bring it back.
Yeah, you are. You're bringing it back, baby. I love that. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to pause for a little break. And you're listening to Rock Your Life with Ari and Alexander. We are on Fun for Life radio station in the Dash Radio family. And we love our station. There's tons of great shows. We'll be back in a minute.
Fun for Life radio. Because sometimes fun is all the therapy you need.
Okay, we're back to Rock Your Life with Ari and Alexander. And if you have not listened to Truth and Tunes with Pili Montilla, do yourself a favor. Get a listen in on her show. She is a cultural music expert, and she interviews all kinds of musicians, producers, writers, like, oh my gosh, so many people from all over the world that have some bomb ass music. So it's like behind the scenes. So check out Truth and Tunes with Pili Montilla here on Fun for Life Radio. And I am talking to Eva Clay, and we were just talking about like what women can do to really start to embrace this sexuality, this true sexuality within. And so to be empowered in the world in a new and better way, basically, to build more community on the planet, build more cooperation, create more empathy, which is delightful. And I'm curious, Eva, you gave us really clear ways for women to start exploring this themselves. How can men show up in a woman's life to encourage this true sexuality and true empowerment?
Number one, by adopting the belief that a woman's sexuality is not for you. A woman's sexuality is for her. Mm. So the patriarchy tells us that women's bodies belong to men, that men have authority over women's bodies, that men have rights over a woman's body, and that they have possession and ownership over her sex. And that without a man I'm talking in the heteronormative frame here, but that without a man, a woman does not have a sexuality. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mm. So for men, understanding that women own their own bodies and they don't belong to you, they belong to them. And her pleasure serves her. And lots of like very well-intended men, I love men and I work with a lot of men, and they simply don't know this. Mm-hmm. And it's again because of how we've been trained. If you're under 40, you've grown up on internet porn. Mm-hmm. And the patriarchy tells us this. So why would they believe differently? Right. I've had great relationships, great boyfriends, great lovers who don't understand that a woman has sensation in sex too, and has needs and preferences, and there's a whole body happening underneath you. So understanding that a woman's sex belongs to her and that it's not just for you, number one. Number two, encouraging and empowering and loving and supporting women in their sexual wholeness and their sexual sovereignty, and celebrating that without wanting to take it from them. So there's a subtle distinction that it's subtle for men, but it's very, very powerful for women. When we see a man celebrate and support our sexuality, not for his own benefit, the feminine begins to trust the masculine again. And the more that men can show up trustable, grounded, celebratory, whole, measured, honoring, then the more the feminine can rise.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I love that. I mean, that's so exciting because it's like, right. It's so interesting to hear you speak of this, that, men with women in your life, it's supporting and encouraging without being threatened by it. Because it's not, a woman in her sexual wholeness is not a threat at all. She's fabulous and she's exciting and she's inspired and she's collaborative. And isn't that what we all want in our relationships with each other? So I think there's this myth that, like a woman, fully empowered or in her wholeness or however you want to say it, is like a threat. And when we can really encourage men to be like, no, like it's delightful for all of us. So you get to support the women in your lives in embracing this as well.
Yeah. And again, we have to look at the patriarchy here, because a woman in her full sexual wholeness is a threat. She is a threat to the patriarchy because she's powerful. And so I think men today, and of course there are exceptions, but men today have been entrained in this, that they want their woman sexually empowered for them, but they don't want her sexually empowered outside of them, because there's a fear that she's going to become wanton, that she's going to be sleeping with other men, that she will be wanted by other men, and that she will leave her partner because now she's radiant and powerful and is, dancing topless on bar tables or whatever. And so again, that patriarchal sentiment of possession and ownership, that's what we need to relinquish. So very well-intended men to begin to look at this, how that might be operating for them in the background, I think is super powerful. And you're right, when women are sparkly and energized and empowered and pleasured appropriately, everybody wins.
Yeah. So it's really good. It's a good encouragement for men to look within themselves of how they really are viewing their women and how they really do encourage and support. And if there can be a shift in that to be even more encouraging, even more supporting in this woman coming forward in her empowered place of sexual wholeness. And I'm also, it's important what you said, that for men to really understand that with the sexuality piece, that the woman's sexuality is not, the pleasure is not for the men. It's not for them. It's for us. And that's an intimate experience that, it could be different for men sometimes, but it's not even a big shift. It's just like, oh, right. Like she gets to have her powerful pleasure however she wants to. And we are such different operating systems, and to really honor that and encourage your woman, if you're with a woman, whoever woman is, to embrace that within herself.
Yes. We love it when men do that. Yes. And to, at the level of the micro, if you're a man and you're listening, or if you're a woman and you have a man and you want to pass something on to him, at the micro level, one of the most powerful things a man can do is learn how to really make love to a woman well. So male sex education is hugely important right now. If you're a man and you want to empower women, fuck them well. Mm-hmm. And what that means is to actually learn how to do that, not from pornography, but from an anatomical perspective. Read a book about women's anatomy and how their pleasure circuitry runs. Develop communication tools to talk to your woman, talk to your lovers, solicit her feedback, create safety for her to do that. Make it safe for her to tell you what she wants. Mm-hmm. If you fuck a woman well, you empower her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's not just by fucking a woman. Big difference.
Right. You learn how she likes it, and you make her pleasure the priority. She comes first.
Yes. And there is a book. She comes first. Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay, cool. This has been so great, Eva. I think there's just so many good nuggets in here of this, this whole conversation of just is like, okay, how can we shift our points of view a little bit? How can we shift things in our own lives and the perspectives of the people that are in our lives to continue this expansion of women in leadership and their full sexual wholeness? And I love, I really hear you that the importance of how this, you gave us good tools for all of us to do in our lives. And then, but you're like, the core of it is education, which is obviously super important too. So it's just the things to start really being aware of and looking at and seeing how change can be created in education. Which is exciting because, there's opportunities for that. So I'm just curious, before we wrap, I'm going to do some lightning round questions for you. Some easy peasy ones since you're in Hawaii. Hello. But I just didn't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add to this conversation before we wrap.
Just that if you're a woman who is wanting more pleasure, wanting to feel more empowered, more embodied, more whole and expressed in your sexuality, know that myself and people like me exist, and you doing a good chunk of work on your sexuality is one of the best things you can ever do.
Amen to that.
So I just really want to encourage your listeners into doing that work, and more is becoming common, and you can find good practitioners, myself included.
Yeah.
And get on it. Get on it, girl.
Yeah. Eva's website is evaclay.com, EVACLAY.com. And you can find her on Instagram. It's just Eva Clay at Instagram, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So just anywhere, all the platforms, easy peasy, Eva Clay. You'll find her. She's got awesome things for you. Follow her because she is the bomb. Okay, so lightning round questions. Since Eva's living in Hawaii in this moment, we'll all try not to be jealous, but I want to know a couple things. What's your favorite thing to do in Hawaii?
Oh gosh, I recently found these hot pools. It's crazy. They are natural pools of water that seep up from the ground, surrounded by lava rocks that are heated underneath by lava that erupted in 2018.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Okay, what do you love to eat that like we don't have on the mainland?
Lilikoi, passion fruit.
Oh, right. I remember when I was there a few years ago, we'd get like it's kind of like jam, like lilikoi jam, and it was so good. Oh my God, it was delicious. Oh, the lilikoi, yes. I love it. What do you love most about this gypsy lifestyle that you're embracing now of like leaving your home in Los Angeles and going to Hawaii for a few months? What's exciting about this for you?
Okay, honestly, this is, I don't know, I'm going to sound kind of nerdy, but everywhere I'm going, I'm finding really badass entrepreneurial women. And I've been having a series of dinners. I'll invite one over at a time and just drop in with them and workshop things and cross coach each other and dance and drink tequila, of course. And I'm just like, wherever I go, there's tequila. And so I'm really getting this like deep, juicy time with women in different parts of the world. And we're serving each other. So what's happening is we're developing this kind of global network. And I love being a pollinator. So that's what's getting me off about living nomadically at the moment.
Wow, that is so cool. I love that. And so like my next question, but you answered it, but it's a little more generic. It's like, how do you make friends? So like you're in Hawaii. How do you make friends? How do you where are you finding these women? Where are they finding you?
Okay, I have a tried and true technique, and I want to share it because I want to inspire your listeners to do the same.
Yeah.
Reach out to women who have something you want. Women who have a relationship that you admire, who have a business that looks exciting, who have a body of knowledge that impresses you. And I guarantee you've got something they want. Mm-hmm. So I don't mean in the sense of a material possession, but in terms of what they embody and the way they walk in the world. And just reach out and say, hey, do you want to connect? Hey, I've made friends. I do this. I'll just reach out to a woman and say, hey, do you want to be friends? I really like you. And they're super flattered. They're like, yeah, like, you know, or I'll walk up to a woman. You know, I'm famous for doing this. Some of my best friends have been this way. I just invite them into a friendship.
Wow. That's so cool. That's so bold. I love that. All right.
Well,
so just invite people in your world.
Yeah.
What have we got to lose? I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, that's a good place to end because that is very inspiring. Thank you so much, Eva. It's been great to talk to you. And I know this has been awesome for anyone who's listening. So we're going to wrap up and I will see you next week on Rock Your Life with Ari and Alexander. Bye, Eva.
Bye.